Hugh Newman. Hugh, there has been much talk recently in regards to giant bones discovered near Stonehenge in the UK. If this is true, and if so, does this mean that there is a possibility that Stonehenge could have been built by giants?
Yes. Yes.
Is that next question now then?
Yeah, I live in the Stonehenge landscape, and I haven't found anything, bones or giants myself just yet, but who knows what's under my house. It is quite haunted, so you know, you never know. But I've been researching with Jim Vieira for a good few years on our new book, The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain, and we were always intrigued by the fact that many of these megalithic sites, Stonehenge included, have these giant legends, these myths at their core. And even the earliest name recorded of Stonehenge is the Giant's Dance, or in Welsh, Corio Gigantum, in various interpretations of that, which comes from the book The History of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth, and there are earlier texts which mention this giant connection as well. And the myth goes, I'll just quickly summarize this, that in very ancient times, the stones of Stonehenge were brought over from the farthest reaches of Africa by a group of giants, and they were placed at a site called Killarus in the remote part of Ireland. They stayed there for thousands of years, and then at some point, King Ambrosius summoned his army, which was led by Uther Pendragon, to bring the stones over from Ireland to Salisbury Plain to build them in honour, or reconstruct them in honour of a fallen army in a great battle where many of his soldiers had been slain. But here they couldn't move them. The 15,000 strong army couldn't move the stones from Ireland. They tried really hard, and they couldn't budge a stone, and so they had to call on the services of Merlin, the magician, or the wizard, to go over there. And he was said to have moved all the stones on his own. And there were two or three interpretations. One story said he used gears, levers, and engines. Another says he used magic and sleight to bring them over. Whichever way he did it, they got to Salisbury Plain and they were reconstructed in the exact configuration. And in fact, the earliest depiction ever of Stonehenge is from a version of the History of Kings of Britain that came out a bit later, that has Merlin with King Ambrosius and what looks like a 16 to 18 foot tall giant lifting one of the lintels, one of the top stones, into place. And so this giant connection with Stonehenge always intrigued us. And then we found that in 1719, myself and Jim came across a report of a 9'4" skeleton being found in a giant's grave, a mound, near Salisbury. Now, Salisbury is the nearest town to Stonehenge. It's just a few miles south, and it's part, really, of the greater Stonehenge landscape. And this really intrigued us. We found 2 or 3 accounts of this, and we know exactly where it was buried, but it's been built over now by the local arts centre. But then we found this other account, which really got us, because this is from 1508, and it was witnessed by Sir Thomas Eliot, who was a well-known scholar. He was an MP for Cambridge. He also wrote the first Latin dictionary. And he witnessed a 14-foot, 10-inch skeleton found in the general area, just south of Salisbury, again, within the Stonehenge landscape. Now, 14'10" is really tall. I mean, if you meet someone who's 7 foot, it's pretty impressive. So when you meet someone who's 14'10", or at least find their skeleton. And he was buried in this huge oak log coffin. It had a book with these strange inscriptions on it that could never be deciphered, and they found this quite large metal disc made of tin and lead that again had the same kind of obscure inscriptions on it, but no one could decode it. All of these have now disappeared, but before they did disappear, they were witnessed not only by Thomas Eliot and his well-known father, but also by John Leland, and various other well-known scholars, almost like celebrities and academics at the time. So they wouldn't really make this up. One of the weird things as well, even in the Bush Barrow, where the famous lozenge was found, which is just next to Stonehenge, the description of the burial there was a very robust, very tall individual. We have similar accounts from other mounds in the area. But also we have this tradition going back to the 1400s of a secret society, the Guild of Tailors in Salisbury, parading a 24-foot giant around town every summer solstice, just after the summer solstice, St. John the Baptist Day, every year since the mid-1400s. This was before the skeletons were even found. And so there's this, why were they parading this giant around? What was this pageant all about? And then we realized they eventually named him St. Christopher. And me and Jim, when we were researching the book, wondered why would they name a giant St. Christopher? And St. Christopher, if you look, he was a giant Canaanite warrior from the Bible lands. And he was said to have carried Jesus on his shoulder when he came over. And this is what he became famous for. And he decided to, kind of worship Jesus and God and all this kind of stuff. But so you've got all these giant connections, even with the Bible lands in this particular area. But I must admit, this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the giant discoveries made, especially in relation to megalithic sites in ancient Britain and Ireland and Scotland and Wales, everywhere. We have over 250 accounts with legends that match the discoveries being made in the ground. And so there's a real story here, and I hope this has given you a quick introduction, and hopefully this answered the question.